Well, Brother Randy scratched his head and wasn't for sure which way to go with this message in this Bible. And he wasn't quite sure. But I hope this afternoon that it brings glory to the Lord. Christian love. Neither capitalism nor communism. First of all, I want to say that I'm amazed at the generosity of our people. I'm not talking about our local church there in Nebraska. I'm talking about our conservative churches. When I get the different missions newsletters and I think about the different missions that our churches support and the scope that they have, I believe that we're doing well. And showing our love to a needy world through our finances. Our churches do well at that, and I commend you for it. I remember being here, it's been a number of years ago now. Haven't been here for a few years, but prior to that we were here quite a bit. In these meetings, I was in ministers' meetings, and I can remember sitting in ministers' meetings and coming back, and my wife and I talking, saying, "I'm not sure, dear, I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to go out there. I'm not sure about the finances," and I did talk about them in the ministers' meeting a little bit, and I'm not sure. And when I said in that ministers' meeting, it's been a while since I've been there, but when I sat there yesterday, I was amazed at how much it's changed since then, and I praise God for it. It's because of your generosity. A little bit about what we're talking about today: capitalism and communism, Christian love, and how we show that, how it's neither. Capitalism, I had to look these definitions up, so I knew kind of what I was talking about a little bit. I mean, I knew, I had an idea, but by reading the definition, it kind of changed my thought patterns a little bit. But capitalism is an economic system in which a society's means of production are held by an individual or organizations, not government, and where products and prices and distribution is determined by competition in a free market. Capitalism basically says, there it is, go for it. It's out there, go do what you can do. Go make what you can make. What you make is yours, and you can take what you make and you can make more, and you can keep on making and make more, and take that and make more. It's yours to do with. Have free reign, just go for it. That's what capitalism is. It's free market. And capital is wealth and money and goods. You produce more wealth than capitalism. And here I like this definition for a capitalist. It says capitalism is practiced enthusiastically by a capitalist. I like that, because that's what's happening in our society. Communism is an economic system in which the group owns the factors of production, and the share of the individual relies upon his abilities and needs. And because of my upbringing and my background in farming and stuff, what stands out to me a lot about communism is I remember studying in school about the collective farms they had in Russia. Now, where I grew up in the community was a farming community. And it's maybe not so much that, I mean, it's still a farming community. But growing up, many of the men in our church were farmers. maybe not quite so much that way anymore in that area because farms has gotten bigger and machinery's gotten bigger and we practice capitalism. So we got bigger and there's not as, it doesn't take as many farmers to do the same thing as we used to do. Now the tractors are going by themselves, so it's changed. Capitalism. But the collective farms in Russia, what happened at that time was, if I understand it right by reading up on it, the government came in and said, no, wait a minute, we're not going to let you have your small farm anymore. We're going to take all these farms, we're going to take your land, we're going to put it all together, we're going to move some families on this farm, and you're all going to work together, and you're going to farm this farm, and the government's going to take your production, government will furnish the seed, government will furnish the equipment, government will take the production, you'll get what share we determine that we need, and that's how we operate. That was communism. That's kind of how communism, that's what I remember studying in school about the collective farms, and that kind of impresses me how the economic side of communism operates. Now, as I sat down to study for the message, the thing that I had a hard part of dealing with in my mind was, communism is it's not friendly to Christianity. It seems like in so many of our communist countries, the Christian is persecuted. And that's what I think about. I don't tend to think so much about the economic part of communism. When you talk about communism, I tend to think more about the persecuted Christians. But there is an economy, a way that the communism and their economy operates. And I started out by commending you for your giving. And I believe that God has blessed us here. We've pretty much had a capitalistic society, so to speak. We were free to go out and to work and to make a living and free to determine how we spend what we earn. Free to do that. However, I told you yesterday when we was talking about honor, and we talked about honoring the government, and I told you that I get interested in the news and in politics and things like that, and I don't vote. I don't get involved in that. But I do probably pay more attention to politics than I need to. But one thing that I've learned in listening to and studying that, I believe that our committee hit on two things that are a threat through the way we handle our finances. Because as I look at the political landscape here in America, here in the United States, I see a divide that is growing wider and wider, it seems. And in the last maybe 4 years or 5 years, it seems like it's gotten much more wider. And on one side, I see a side that's headed towards communism, and the other side is kind of standing there holding the reins, trying to pull it back. And I believe the divide is growing larger. That's kind of what I see. And I wonder where we find ourselves as conservative people and how we live. How is the church going to go forward into the future, and especially you young people, in this country that has become so politically divided? I believe that I'm afraid. that as I look at the thoughts, the opinions of the different parties in our leadership, so to speak, and the different things that are being suggested, and I'm afraid that sometimes I tend to take a side, and sometimes that side, the side that I take, is determined by how I think it will affect my pocketbook. We have a party in control now that has what they call the Build Back Better program. I don't know if any of you heard that. I want to be careful, I don't want to get too political. But I found out the other day that it's probably going to raise our taxes. I'm not happy about that. But where does God want me to be? That's the question. Not where do I need to be? I think sometimes it would be better if I paid no attention. Maybe I wouldn't get so worked up. But brothers and sisters, I believe that we need to understand the day that we're living in. And how we function, how our government is, affects how we function. That's a fact of life. We're not citizens. Our citizenship is in heaven. But we're still citizens here. And it affects how we live. It affects our well-being. It affects our finances. What our government does affects our financial well-being. And we need to be careful when they make a decision or when they make a choice. When they pass a law that is contrary to my financial well-being, what is my response to that? And how do I respond in my community and to my brothers in the church? We need to pay attention. Christian love, neither capitalism nor communism. I believe that in spite of the political governance that we're under, God has a way for us to function. And He desires in that to be glorified. I want us to turn to Matthew chapter 25. Go to we're going to start at verse 31. And we're going to read the end of the chapter. It says, "And when the Son of Man shall come in His glory, and all the holy angels with Him, then shall He sit upon the throne of His glory, and before Him shall be gathered all nations." The capitalists are going to be there, and the communists are going to be there. All the nations will be there. "And He shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And He shall set the sheep on His right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the King say unto them on His right hand, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and He gave me I was thirsty and you gave me drink, and I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me, and I was sick and you visited me. And I was in prison and you came to me. And then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee in hunger, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? And when saw we thee a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came to thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, you've done it unto me. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart unto me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you took me not in. I am naked, and you clothed me not. Sick and in prison, and you visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee in hunger, or athirst, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? And then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not unto one of the least of these, ye did it not unto me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. The other night, or whatever it was, Brother Paxton had emotions. And I appreciate Brother Pat. He's very faithful in preaching to us there in Nebraska, and I appreciate the challenges that he puts before us. But Brother Pat said the other night, and he's talking about love, he said, love is an action word. Do you remember that when Brother Pat said that? He said, love is an action word. If love doesn't motivate, it isn't love. It isn't Christ's love. The difference between these two groups of people is one simple word that I see here. One group said yes to the love of Christ, and the other one said no. Two little letters, one small word, and it changed their eternity. They said no to the love of Christ. And I don't know, I'm not sure the second group, well, the first group, they said yes to Christ's love. And how do we know that? Because they seen the needs around them. And they not only see them, Pat said love's an action word. What do? They responded to the need. They fed the hungry. They clothed the naked. They visited the sick. They visited those in prison. Their love was an action word. Now, I don't know about the second group. And I wonder, as I looked at this, you remember something else that Brother Pat told us? Brother Pat asked us the other morning or the other evening, whatever it was, he said, what is a word that is opposite from love? You remember when he asked that? And I appreciated the word that he used. He said the opposite of love is selfishness. I believe that's what he said. And brothers and sisters, I wonder if the second group, without the love of Christ, even seen in either everything, because they were selfish. And how you say, how does this relate to capitalism and how does it relate to communism? I believe that we can get so taken up in this whole thing of capitalism, of being free to go out there and just go hammer down, so to speak, and make all the money we can make. And we're going to make this money, and we're going to pay this business off, and we're going to buy this business, and we're going to run this business, and when we get this one paid off. Just a few weeks ago, we do excavating back there in Nebraska, and we had a call from from a farmer there in the area, and he said, hey, he said, I got some trees on the fence line, and he said, they're kind of on the hill. The fence line was the hill there, the fence line went right over the hill, the trees were on that fence line. And he said, I want your trees out, and he said, I want that hill pushed off, I want it down there in the washout, off to the west side up there. And he said, I want that hill pushed off down there in that low spot, and make that low spot flatter, and he said, I want you to go right up against the fence line. He said, I want you to go straight down right against the fence line and take that dirt out. And I said, well, you know your neighbor? Yeah. I said, well, if I start taking dirt out straight down that fence line, his dirt's going to start caving off and falling down. And we don't want a problem there. I always said, I'm not too worried. I said, I'm going to buy that farm anyway. That's capitalism. You see, he's got his farm, and his farm's producing, and someday he's going to buy that. That's what he's looking for. That's what he's looking for. And I wonder, how is capitalism affecting the church? I wanted to commend you all for your giving, and I believe you do well. What I'm talking about is, let's be careful that the society, the culture in which we live, does not change that. Let's continue to show the love of Christ in how we handle our finances. There's another attitude out there that I've run into sometimes. I remember this is more of a communist attitude, and I think we need to be careful about that. I remember as a young man, I worked in a local John Deere dealer, and at least once a week, I was up in the Quad Cities at the John Deere factory. Harvester Works was there, Wild Planter was there, and Parts Depot was there. They had different plants up there where we'd go and pick up parts and equipment and stuff like that. And they told me they were union, they're going on strike. I was probably making minimum wage at that time, about whatever it was. And I knew that these guys back there that were working back there that were loading my truck and stuff, I knew they probably made 3 or 4 times more than I did. So I went up there and he said, well, I don't know what's going to happen next week. And he came and said, I don't know if we'll be here, we're going on strike. I said, oh, really? I said, I wish, what do you make? I said, I'm curious. He told me. I said, do you realize how much more money you make than I make? Why are you going out on strike? Oh, he said, that money isn't the reason I'm going on strike. He said, I make plenty of money, so I got a medical plan and a retirement plan, and I make this amount of money and this and this. And said, that's not the issue. Okay, then what's the issue? Well, he said, do you have any idea what my manager makes or what the CEO of this company makes? He said, it ain't fair. Okay. Brothers and sisters, we need to guard against that mentality. I've found in my life, it's not near, how much we make is not nearly important as how we spend what we make. That makes a much greater difference than how much we make. We have those in our leadership, in our society, that think we're not capable of taking care of ourselves. The government needs to help us. And I hope we don't lose the love we have for one another and how we share. Our medical plans, I mentioned our missionary plans and things like that. And I think of CAM and their disaster program and all the different places they are. And I think what a testimony it is to those around us and how it glorifies God. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, I want to turn there. In verse 6, but this I say, he which soweth sparingly shall reap also sparingly, and he which soweth bountifully shall reap also bountifully. Every man according as he purposed in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. And brothers and sisters, I believe this afternoon that the reason we can be a cheerful giver is because the love of God is in our heart. I believe that's what it takes for us to be cheerful in our giving. We ought not be focused on how what we're giving is affecting us. We ought to be focused on how our giving can affect others. You see, when it goes back to what Brother Pat told us about the opposite of love, being selfish. When we think about the brother needs help, oh, I just can't. This is all I can afford to give him. I can't. If I don't do this, I can't take my wife out for supper Friday night. I just can't afford to give this. Now, wait a minute. Why don't we focus more on blessing that brother? That brother has a medical need maybe, or maybe that brother, maybe something broke down, maybe is, I don't know, you know the needs that arise. But why can't we focus on how much we can bless him with what God has blessed us with? I was reminded this morning that youth activities are right after the message, and I was reminded that as a youth, how it is to sit there when youth activities are playing and the preacher goes over, so I'm trying to be careful. I'm not so old that I don't remember that. One of the things that came to my mind with this assignment, the first verse I think that popped into my mind was in 1 John chapter 2. And I think that's been read already here. Chapter 3 and verse 16. Hereby we perceive the love of God, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brother. But whoso loveth this world's goods, and seeth his brother have need, and shutteth up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? And I thought about this in connection with the assignment. The question is asked, if we have the world's goods, and I wonder if there's anyone here in this audience that can say they don't have this world's goods, I think what he's talking about is the necessities of life. I don't see anybody here that's lacking for food. I don't see anybody here that doesn't have clothing. And I believe you all have a place to sleep. I believe the Lord's talking to us. And He's telling us, you have this world's goods. Your brother doesn't. How dwelleth God's love in you? How can God's love dwell in you when you don't give Him the things that are necessary for life? Challenging. There's needs all around us. Christian love, neither capitalism or communism. I think it's interesting when I think about the whole thing of giving. And I believe this afternoon that it doesn't matter what political party that we function under. It does not erase the Christian from their responsibility to each other. It doesn't matter. I often think about our giving. And I've often thought about the God that we serve. There's been different times mentioned about the power of God and the ability and things that He can do. And the Scripture tells me that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. And I don't believe that God needs what I give to feed the hungry and to clothe the naked or any of that. I believe that God has the power to do that instantaneously if He so wishes. I believe He does. That's the God we serve. I'm not telling you this to tell you that it's not necessary, that it's unnecessary to give. What I'm saying is, I believe that God allows it so He can be glorified as we give. I believe that's one reason. What I believe God wants to happen is as His love grows and develops in my heart and in your heart. And in response to that love, when we see a need and we respond in love to that need, it glorifies God. I believe it also teaches me something about how I look at finance. It teaches me about contentment and covetousness, and that's a whole other story. We don't have time to go there. Our theme is known by their love. And our subject this afternoon is showing that love in the context of the political, social, and economic entity that we are under. God, give us grace to be able to use what He's blessed us with to bless others. We heard about that this morning. I would just remind you also of the Good Samaritan. I was going to turn there and read it. I won't take time to know the story. But they came to Jesus and they asked Him the greatest commandment, you know how it goes. And Jesus gave them the account of the Good Samaritan. And that was kind of a political situation, too, to a degree. It was Samaritans and Jewish. Jesus was talking about loving your neighbor. And you see, what the Samaritan did was an act of love. Those others all passed by. On the other side, they didn't want to get involved for whatever reason. And I wondered maybe they were Catholics, huh? I don't know. I wondered. Maybe there was a meeting or I wonder maybe there was a big real estate deal they was closed. I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Jesus said, who really showed love? He didn't say it quite that way. Who really showed love? And the only right answer, the only way to look at it, was the one that was. He said, well, I suppose the one that was. I'll leave you with the words that Jesus told him. Go and do not like it.